doublet, a black mantle draped over his shoulder, and a pleated white ruff. Upon closer examination, we see how well Howells captures the human flesh, the stubble, the hair that is soft, thin and fine. He has a mustache and a pointed beard. His hand is almost in a fist, with the thumb pointed upward. And you can unmute yourself if you can tell me, what do you think this fist, what is the position of his fist mean? Do you have any idea? What does this tell you about him?
He pointing it to his face.
Yes. Okay. What else? Anything else? Well, do you think he's a weak man? Do they think that fist shows that he's weak? I think it's probably signaling strength and confidence. The lighting and the only part, thank you.
The fist is over his heart.
Oh, interesting. Yes. Okay. Very good. The only thing we do know about this gentleman is that he was 48 years old, and that was written on the back of the canvas. But other than that, we don't know. But the lighting of the brown background draws attention to the face, which is an at the moment presentation. The subject glances at the viewer in a spontaneous manner. Hals used strong color and loose brushstroke to give vitality to his portraits. Northern Europe is Protestant at the time this portrait was painted, and Calvinism is strong in Haarlem. The result is simplicity in dress, art, and liturgy. This created a great opportunity for portrait painters because portraits could express success and pride in family. It was time to record events such as weddings, gatherings of professionals, militias, and other groups. Early portraits painted by Howells reflected the subject's status in life, using specific poses, settings, attire, and accoutrements. Then next. And I want you to see the difference. This was painted almost 9 years before the Hall's portrait. These are the Merrymakers of Shrovetide, painted in 1615. Hals depicted a play performed for Carnivale to celebrate Shrovetide, a kind of Mardi Gras before Lent. This colorful and detailed painting was inspired by works from Flemish artists like Rubens and Jan Bruegel the Elder. We see broad brushstrokes of figures in the background. Portraits soon changed. With the increasing members of Dutch middle-class patrons, the task for Dutch portraits became more challenging. Calvinists shunned ostentation, instead wearing uniform, subdued, and dark clothing with little variation or decoration. Hals solved this problem by injecting an engaging spontaneity into his images and conveyed the personalities of his sitters as well. Next. Now, this could very well have been a portrait that looked maybe like our high school pictures, that we were all standing shoulder to shoulder in the same white shirts, looking straight ahead. But in the Arches of St. Hadrian painting, each man is a troop member, an individual with a distinct personality. Some engage the viewer directly, whereas others look at a companion. Where one is stern, another is animated. The uniformity of the attire, black military dress, white ruffs, and sashes does not seem to have deterred Howells from injecting a spontaneity into the work. He used those elements to create a lively rhythm that extends throughout the composition and energizes the portrait. Howells showed interest almost entirely in portraits and full-size figures. He was extremely popular, even though this was a time for many Dutch painters. In spite of his success, he did not enjoy financial security. He spent the final years of his life in an old man's home, a charitable institution, and he painted until the end of his life. Next. This portrait of a lady was painted by Nicholas May in 1677. In this portrait, we see a stylish young lady and her lapdog in a beautifully staged painting. The rich silk fabric of her clothing suggests wealth, as do the beautiful pearls. Behind her, a darker red curtain opens to her right on an imaginary garden in the sunset. The streaks of red and orange enliven the sky as the billowing clouds visually complement the fluttering curtain in the background. In contrast to many paintings of people, this portrait does not appear static. The sitter seems to emerge from a dark background while the light emanates from the pale skin of her face. The diagonal of her dress adds to the sense of movement, as does the diagonal silk over her shoulder. As she appears to tilt her head, the long strand of pearls seem to move up slightly on her covered breast. The lapdog, with his tail curled and sense of alertness, could spring up at any moment. All this presents a fleeting moment. Despite the careful staging, there is spontaneity to the depiction of a precise moment. That spontaneity is further emphasized by the fluid brushstrokes. Next. We see the same sense of catching a fleeting moment in the portrait of Lady as Diana. If you notice, her face is very similar to the one of the previous portrait. Besides these aristocratic Baroque portraits, Mays painted many people in domestic scenes. He showed women praying, spinning, sewing, making lace, preparing food, or teaching children. There are some that call attention to vices. Next. A good-natured one in the latter category is the idle servant. We view the housewife as she appeals to us to witness the laziness of the sleeping servant, who not only left her mess of pots and dishes unwashed, but allows the cat to snatch the fowl. More importantly, he allows us to look from one room to another, where conversing women introduce a minor subplot. The Dutch call this a kind of glimpse, a look or a glance. Mays did not invent this motif. It was used as early as the 15th century by Jan van Eyck, his assistant or a follower, on a manuscript painting that shows St. Elizabeth in her lying-in room next, after the birth of St. John the Baptist.
Wait a minute.
There it is. So there we have the lying-in room with the birth of St. John the Baptist. And as you see in the right-hand corner, there is another room. So we have this kind of second story there. Later artists used this motif too, but Mays gave it a new life when he painted a number of domestic scenes in settings similar or more elaborate than the one in The Idle Servant. Next.
Oh, sorry, the arrows are going the wrong way.
So that's fine, that's good.
Okay.
And this painting, the strong chiaroscuro, relates it to Rembrandt, but May's personal contribution is the emphasis he places upon creating the illusion of interior space in which the scene is set. Next.
Wait a minute.
Okay, thank you. Some scholars have suggested that this young lady could be Mary Stuart, the wife of William of Orange, governor of the United Province of the Netherlands. Born in 1662, she would have been 15 the year this painting was made, the year of her marriage. In that case, the dog would appear to be a symbol of fidelity. Next. This portrait of Cooper Penrose, painted by Jacques Louis David, was painted in 1802. Cooper Penrose was a member of a prominent Quaker family. He was originally from England, but immigrated to Waterford, Ireland, known for the famous Waterford crystal, which was founded by his uncles. He pursued a career as a lumber merchant and eventually inherited the successful business from his father-in-law. He lived a very lavish life. collecting art and antiques. And his library at Woodhill included works by Voltaire, Sterne, and Fielding. These were not the sort of books that would have been approved of in the Quaker households at the time. Due to Cooper Penrose's extravagant life, he was threatened with expulsion from the Quaker Society of Friends. In 1802, at the age of 63, he went to France, where he was introduced to Jacques-Louis David and tried to convince David to paint his portrait. This was not easy, for David had received very few commissions from sitters who were not French. They finally agreed on a price. This portrait was an attempt to combat the criticism of the life that Cooper Penrose was living. This was truly a portrait. Penrose sat 18 times for this portrait, from 10 o'clock until 4 at each sitting, and the cost of it was 200 louis. Penrose's goal was to have the image portray the austere Quaker life he was supposedly living. Okay, if you feel up to it and you can see, do you answer this question? Do you think he accomplished this? Do you go back? Anybody have any thoughts on this? I think this looks really more like a Dutch painting than a French painting. He's not wearing a wig. He doesn't have any of the embellishments. The 3/4 length portrait shows Penrose dressed plainly, seated against a plain brown wall. He positioned his head lower on the canvas than is traditional in French portraiture. And this makes the sitter more accessible to the viewer and more approachable. The color palette is limited. Penrose is dressed in a black cutaway jacket, white waistcoat, dark gray knee breeches, and white stockings, sitting in a neoclassical chair. The viewer's attention is focused on the head and hands, and notice the detail that he has. And I must say, I am only a beginning painter, but I know people that paint that say hands are probably the most difficult thing to paint. And I think he did an excellent job in that. And there's so much detail on his face, the lines in his face, the detail, his hair. So he really, thank you. He really has done a good job on those. So with those three things, with his head and the hands, it forms 3 points of a triangle in the center of the composition. Jacques-Louis David was born in 1748. When he was 9, his father was killed in a duel, and he was left by his mother to be raised by his 2 uncles. After showing an interest in painting, he was sent to Francois Boucher, a friend of the family and a Rococo painter. David was more interested in neoclassical style that was a reaction to Rococo, and was sent to Joseph Marie Vian, whose style more suited his interests. Rather than create scenes from antiquity, David began to portray scenes from the French Revolution. Next slide.
Could I just ask you a question before
Sure.
we move on?
Yeah.
Do you think that the way he painted him low on the canvas and plainly without embellishment had anything to do with the relationship that David had with Penrose? The interaction, the way that if he sat 18 times for this portrait, do you think that David, and also David had refused him 3 times, did he have negative feelings toward him, or was it all because Penrose wanted a humble look?
I think it was a combination of 2. I think he was probably annoyed and he was putting him down. And in doing that, I think he accomplished what Penrose wanted.
Yes.
I think it was a combination of the 2.
Right. Okay.
Okay. So let's see. So here we have The Death of Marat, a revolutionary radical, in one such work that provided inspiration and encouragement to the revolutionary forces. So why was he stabbed in the bathtub? He had a skin condition like severe eczema, and could only be comforted in a bath of oatmeal. Charlotte Corday, only 24 years old, stabbed him for escalating violence of the revolution through his published stories. The painting is both realistic and idealistic. The green rug, the bathtub, papers, and pen are left behind. The skin condition was omitted. David pulled from a religious inspiration to make Marat appear like a martyr. Marat's right arm, long and limp, cascading down the canvas, has shown comparison to Jesus in Caravaggio's The Entombment of Christ. David was a fan of Caravaggio and mimics his use of life. I found these striking. I was so amazed when I found this. I don't know if the rest of you do, but I just feel that even the way the left arm is, I think it very much imitates this.
Mhm. Yeah.
So with David's study of Greek and Roman sculpture, he learned how to model the muscles and the sinews of the body and give it the appearance of noble beauty, and also aim for simplicity. David became an active, politically committed artist involved in good deal of revolutionary forces. He was sent to prison and remained there until amnesty of 1795. After that, he devoted his time to teaching. He admired Napoleon and was commissioned to commemorate his crossing of the Alps. Unable to get Napoleon to sit for his portrait next, David used a bust as a starting point for his features and had his son sit on top of a ladder for the posture. When Napoleon fell in 1815, David was exiled to Belgium for 10 years. David died in 1825 after being struck by a carriage and never recovered. Want to continue, Jane?
Yes. Okay. We're going to shift gears a little for these pictures that I'm going to show you. I'm going to ask you, all of you who are here. And by the way, Samantha, a number of people have been calling me and saying they can't get on. So I don't know what the story is, but look around and see if you can figure out why they're not.
Jane, this
Yeah.
is Janet. I had to go to your first announcement to get on. So I tried the second announcement you sent and I couldn't get on.
I see. So
I
you
went to this, and then I went back in my email and found you, and then I was able to get on.
Okay, maybe that second one that I sent it didn't work. And in fact, that's the one I first tried today, and it didn't
Might
work.
have been a different link, but yeah, if they're able to go back to that first.
Well, I don't know. I can't call them all back. The problem. I'm in the middle of this.
If they go, they can also view it on Facebook. We are actually currently now streaming live on Facebook. We are able to get that up. So if they do go to our Facebook page, they can access that.
Well, okay. I hope they can hear it, but I can't deal with it because we're now going to move on to look at some more portraits where I'm going to be asking you, all of you who are on this, to unmute yourselves, and make comments, answer my questions, be involved in it, because I like to have a conversation about this rather than just giving you information, because that's how I do it. So, must a portrait be named to be a portrait? Is it a picture with a name? Okay, that's one. Must it resemble the person? We don't know, but we can talk about that. And finally, what is the purpose of the portrait? Is it done for political purposes, propaganda, to glorify the person, for flattery? Anyway, those are some of the questions. So we're going to begin in Egypt in the 1st to the 3rd century. And I have discovered these incredible portraits, the Fayum mummy portraits. And you can see here's Cairo. And here's Fayum. So Fayum is, it's an oasis. And my friend Nathan sent me an image taken from space of Fayum, the oasis, and the astronauts sent this out on Mother's Day as a Mother's Day heart greeting to all mothers, and specifically their mothers. And I just needed to show that to you because it's a very cool thing. Okay, let's look at these mummy portraits. I'm sure you will agree that these are just extraordinary. They were placed, as you see, in the mummy wrappings, and you wonder how the artists were able to, when the people were dead, paint such lifelike and seemingly accurate pictures of the people. In fact, they were painted while the people were still alive, then hung in their houses. And when the person died, the paintings were cut down and fitted into the mummy wrappings. And that is how this process worked. So you see that both men and women were portrayed. Notice the way the eyes, the importance of the eyes. This town of Fayum was under Roman control at this time. It was in Egypt, but under Roman control. So what we have is a combination of Roman and Egyptian imagery. So these, you get the sense that they look Egyptian, but not the way we remember King Tut's covering on his sarcophagus with his coal painted eyes. Anyway, here are just three more. This one actually has a name, and of a young boy whose name was Eutyches, and it was painted in 100 of the Common Era. There are two ways that these paintings were done. One was encaustic, which is using wax as the medium for the pigment. And this one is an encaustic painting. You can see it. It has a kind of a gloss, a shine to it, and very nuanced. Whereas this one is done with a tempera, which is more matte medium. So, okay, let's move on. Now, here from the 1300s is a painting of John II, called John the Good, Jean le Bon. What would you say is the difference between this portrait and the ones we've just looked at? Anybody have what about the way, what's that? Profile, exactly. This is done in profile. And one reason for that may have been that the model for it was taken from Greek and Roman coins, where on the coins, very often the people were portrayed in profile. Another aspect of this is the gold background. And this, when we think of gold background, we think of religious paintings and specifically icons. So this Jean le Bon was king of France, and something I read said you wouldn't know from looking at this that he was a king. But he is identified up here. This is his name, which I can't read. It looks like Jehan, but that's what that's.
Wait.
What's that? Did you say something? Okay, let's move on. Okay, this is from the 1400s in northern, in the Netherlands. This is the Northern Renaissance type of portrait. And here we know the artist was Roger van der Weyden, but we don't, there's another person coming in. We don't know who this is, but would you say this looks like a realistic portrait? I mean, she looks like a real person. She's rather austerely dressed, which would be in line with the Protestant Revolution. So let's keep going here. Okay, is this a portrait?
No.
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 And why is it not a portrait?
She obviously didn't sit for the painting.
No, she didn't. Do we know what she even looked like?
Not really.
We don't. This is the Georgian Mother of God, and this is an icon, a large icon from the 17th century Moscow school. And this is in the Timken collection. This is just a beautiful icon. And there is a difference between icons and portraits, and yet people are portrayed in icons. They are generally flat and there is generally no space around them. And you see the gold background that I referred to before. So the purpose, does anyone have a sense of the purpose of the icon as compared to the purpose of a more realistic portrait?
Well, it's supposed to be devotional.
This is a devotional picture, that's right.
Mhm.
Speak up.
To teach?
To teach, it absolutely. It can be to teach the religious stories. In this case, these Russian icons were a conduit for the worshipers to go to get closer to God. Okay, I keep admitting people here. Okay, this is in the Timken collection. This is a portrait of Guy the 17th, the Comte de Laval, Guy XVII, from 1540, painted by the artist Francois Clouet. The artist and the subject were, I believe, around the same age. They both were elevated to be valets of the bedchamber to the King Francis I at the time. The story of Guy was that he was the 17th in a long line in the family of Laval. They were, for generations and generations back, they were French aristocracy. And when his father died, Guy, whose name I've forgotten what his baptized name was, but he took his father's name Guy because they were such a noble family. They were entitled to pass down that name, not just the Laval name, but the first name Guy. So, okay, let's look at the way he is dressed. Would you say that he's dressed as you would expect an aristocrat to be dressed? Does he look flamboyant? Does he look fancy? Do his clothes tell you anything about his stature? I would say that, let me show you the next one, because here we have three kings of France, or actually two, Henri II and Charles IX, Henry II and Charles IX. This is Charles IX as a young man, I think at age 10, and here is an older person. But notice the way they're dressed, very similar, in the black jacket with his is rather simple with the gold embroidery. But wait, look at the incredible painting of this collar. This is just some gorgeous painting. Wait, let me get back down here. Notice the very shallow mustache. He's a young man. Look at his eyes. To me, he does not look like a happy person. And in fact, his life was was short, exactly, and tragic. He was married young. He and his wife did not have any children. And when he died, his wife remarried, and her children died, so that with him and with her, the Laval name died out, which is after 17 generations is a tragedy. So here were the kings, and you see that their jackets are similar to his, but he's wearing jewelry, fancy jewelry, and again, look at the collar, the painting in the collar, and look at the fur on this. It's just beautiful painting.
None of them have very happy expressions on their faces.
No, and that, although this one of Charles is he looks a little amused, don't you think? But you're right. But I don't believe that it was fitting for a king or anyone to be sitting there grinning. Imagine having your portrait done and having to smile the whole time. It would be a little trying. Okay, now, I mentioned that Francois Clouet was appointed valet of the bedchamber and painter to the king when his father, Jean Clouet, this is Jean, died. Jean had been the official painter to the king. Here is his portrait of Francis I. Well, this is an entirely different portrait than what we've been looking at. We saw the simple black jackets that they were wearing. This is not quite the same. There's nothing that actually, he's not wearing a crown, but if you notice the brocade background, you notice the crown here. That gives you the hint that this is the king, but this is actually looks to me like a mannerist portrait. I mean, look at the size of the of his clothes compared to the size of his head. His head looks small. And okay, to get back to one of my questions, what do you think was the purpose of this painting? Does this seem to be to aggrandize, to inflate his image to the people, or for himself? What do you think?
Certainly projects power and wealth to my eyes.
He does project power and wealth, and there, I mean, he's wearing an interesting pendant here, and there's a carving on the head, on the top of the hilt of his sword. He has, whoa, he has pearls. I'm sorry, let me go back. Oh. All right, just a minute. Sorry. Okay, I don't know what those lines were. Anyway, Francois, his son, also painted Francis I. Here he painted him on horseback. But again, this is different from the kind of portrait that he had painted of the other kings. It was suggested that in his early career, he was not so flamboyant with color, but I would say that this is, he's breaking out of it here, although this is as early as the others, in fact, earlier than the others. But this elevates the king to the top of the canvas, talking about Cooper Penrose from before, where he was lowered on the canvas. Right, this has, look at him, he's right at the top here. I mean, the horse is bigger than he is, but that's just normal. Okay, is this a portrait? This is by Rembrandt. It's called Saint Bartholomew, And yet look at his face. It certainly looked like a real human being. Yes, Paula?
Yeah, but it wasn't a portrait. He didn't sit for it, but I think the face looks a little bit more like Rembrandt.
Oh, but wait, I'm going to show you some pictures of Rembrandt. Actually, I think he probably did sit for it. This is a real human being. I mean, do you have information that he actually did not, that he invented this picture? I don't think so. I think that this is a picture of a real human being, but not called a portrait. It is done as Saint Bartholomew. And we know it's Saint Bartholomew because of his attribute, the knife, and that knife is his attribute because he was flayed alive. That is, his skin was removed while he was still alive, which is pretty gruesome. But notice where the light is coming from up on the left. Notice what is illuminated. This triangular part of his face, his hand, and the knife. Those are the important parts of this painting. His clothing is not important. When you see this painting in person, it is pretty dark. We're in our slide, we're seeing it better than you would see it in the museum. There's more. This slide happens to be a lighter slide, but I wanted to show you another painting in the Timken collection, the St. Francis in Meditation by Zurbaran, because I think that the clothing gives you a hint to who these people are, not just their attributes or a skull in the case of St. Francis. This robe that Francis is wearing is like an attribute. I mean, you always see Francis in a brown robe, and when his hood is up, it means that this is a time that he's in contemplation. When the hood is down, not so much. And he is holding in his hands a skull, and so this gives us the idea that he is contemplating death or the shortness of life. Okay, to go back to your point about looks like Rembrandt, I thought I'd show you 3 self-portraits that Rembrandt did from youth to middle age to old age. These don't look to me like Bartholomew. This is a different person. And I know that Rembrandt did take people off the street to come in and pose for him for different paintings that he wanted to make. So Rembrandt, as you know, was just a marvelous artist, and his
Okay. Jane, but it does look like a Dutch face. Bartholomew definitely looks like a Dutch face with the big nose.
absolutely.
And the formation of it. I've got a lot of Dutch ancestry, so does Martin. So we know those
Yeah.
faces well.
So this face looks familiar to you.
Yeah, very much. It could be my father.
Oh my gosh. Oh, I thank you for telling me that, Janet. I'm because I am convinced that it's a real person.
Yeah.
But the designation portrait is a different designation. There are different
Yes.
meanings, and I am sure that the same was true for Zurbaran, that he had a real person posing for him.
Yeah.
So that's what the artists do. But these 3, I mean, to me, Rembrandt's self-portraits look like a real Dutch person.
Mhm.
The nose and
Yes.
everything about those faces. So self-searching, all of them at different times in his life. Okay, here's another, and this is in the Timken collection. This is by Peter Paul Rubens, and it's the portrait of a young man in armor. There's question as to whether this is a real person or what is called a trony, which is just an example painting that other artists or this artist could use in a crowd scene, use as an example, use as something to either copy or base another human figure on. It's very beautiful painting. Let's look at his face a little more closely. I don't know. Are you convinced that there was a real person that he was looking at? It looks pretty realistic. Oh, here we go again with those lines. So I wanted you to see this by Rubens as well. And here, these are from, this painting is from a series that Rubens did for Marie de Medici when she was coming to France to marry Henry II. And before he had never seen her, they had never seen each other. So she sends her portrait to him so he can see what she looks like. So whether we know whether this is her glorified or not, it's hard to say. I suspect it's glorified. The purpose would be for her glorification, as all of these paintings are. This is just one example that I'm showing you. But I mean, for the glorification, look at this, peacocks and gods looking down and little putti and warriors. This is probably a Greek god. Angels, and here she is. Mrs. Thomas Gage, painted by John Singleton Copley in just pre-revolutionary, or I should say during the time of the American Revolution. Her husband, who I will show you also. Wait a minute. Let's go back to her and I'll get to her husband. Anyway, she was Margaret Tremble Gage. She came from a well-off family. And here he has painted her in this beautiful rose colored, coral colored robe with a Turkish turban on her head, with pearls in her hair, pearls at her neck, pearls at her sleeve, on a beautiful brocade satin couch, looking dreamy. John Singleton Copley, a Boston artist, was a good businessman, and at this time in Boston and in America, the paintings that sold were portraits. And so while he was still painting in America, he painted portraits to earn money. He believed that this painting was the most beautiful of all the paintings of women that he did, of all the portraits. And we know that this is her portrait. We don't know exactly what she looked like, but here I mean, we can see her face, and he's made her to look very beautiful and very dreamy. I like to ask if you can tell what time of day it is by looking at this portrait. Does anybody have an idea from what you can see in the portrait, whether it's early morning, whether it's late evening, late afternoon?
Late afternoon.
Late afternoon. And why would you say so?
The sun is low.
The sun is low on her face.
Mhm.
It's her expression, I think. You don't have that expression early in the morning.
No, that's good.
Oh, I think that's early morning.
Yeah, why?
The light is so, it just glows on her. And I don't think you get that kind of white light in the afternoon. It would be a little more golden.
It would be warmer. Good
Yeah.
point.
And she's looking at, well, I always think she's looking towards the east. She's from the East Coast,
That's right. She's from
California wasn't made, wasn't ours. Um, so yeah, I think this is early morning, and look at the way it's shining on her dress. It's just, yeah.
It's interesting.
Yeah, that's very good. And doesn't she have a dreamy sort of expression on her face?
Mhm.
Yes.
But
she
look at her hair down. Would,
Oh, good point.
yeah, would that be a normal way for a dressed up woman to have her hair?
Mhm. In the morning,
I think-
sure. Yeah.
Except that isn't she dressed a little fancily for in the morning? So
Hmm.
it's hard to tell, isn't it?
Mm.
I somehow thought that maybe she was it's very late. Actually, because of the light, it wouldn't be late at night, but she looks like she's just come from a party. I mean,
Oh,
this is not the way people dressed in revolutionary times in America, in North America, and specifically in Boston. Her husband was the leader, the general in charge of the British forces in North America at this time. And John Singleton Copley came down from Boston to New York, where she was living. Now that I think of it, I said Boston, but this was in New York. He had a number of commissions to do portraits in New York, and she was the first one he did. And he always said after this that this was the most beautiful of all portraits that he had done of women. Now let me show you another portrait. This is, I have her name, Abigail Smith Babcock. But notice what she's wearing.
Is that ermine?
Same dress.
It's the same dress. So you might think that this was Margaret Tremble Gage's dress, but it was probably a dress that Copley brought with him for the women to wear. And she is wearing an ermine cape here, which tells you something about her stature. Notice the turban and the pearls, similar, but not as fancy. And she's,
I think this dress doesn't fit either woman.
I think you're right, especially this one. I mean, that's a really good point, Martha.
That's not the same.
she's sitting on the same settee too.
Yes, this was,
Yeah.
he rented a studio when he came down to New
Mm.
York.
Mm.
And I guess he rented some furniture also, or maybe it was there. But yes, same. But you see, this face is just not anywhere near as beautifully painted. Let's see. It's true that the slide is a little fuzzier, but
She's a little older.
she's a little older.
Yeah, she's a little older, so she had the little, she was like, look at the wrinkles.
Yes, yeah. Well, he did okay by her. I mean,
The dress is not the same. It's
not exactly the same.
No,
It's
no.
close, but not this. It's the same fabric, but it has a different belt. It might be. Anyway, notice what's in her hand. Looks like a coral necklace she's going to put on. Maybe she's just getting dressed. Maybe this is morning for her. Anyway, I guess we have to move on. But I want to show you some more of what time. Oh my gosh, yeah.
Question.
Okay, we're running out of time here. Okay, this is go ahead.
Mrs. Thomas Gage's left arm draws my eye off the painting, whereas in most of the other portraits, the position of the hand draws my eye back to the face.
Well, don't you think that in Mrs. Thomas Gage, it's both?
Yeah, the right arm draws your
Right.
attention to the face, but the left arm takes me off the painting.
It's true. It slides right off the page, and the direction of her gown also goes right off the page. But she's squarely on the page. because she has her rooted there. I wanted you to see the picture of her husband, nowhere near as sensitively painted. He's the general. Here are some of his troops down below. Let's see.
Jane, I just want to interject that when her portrait was sent to London, the caddy women there said it was a very handsome portrait. So evidently he made her look beautiful. Maybe she wasn't, since we've never seen a photograph of her, maybe she wasn't quite as beautiful as he portrayed her. Or at least the
Absolutely.
women in London said that. So it's no wonder that he thought it was the most beautiful portrait he ever painted.
Still liked it. Maybe he thought she was beautiful.
Mhm.
I mean, he certainly painted her as if he thought she was
Right.
beautiful. So anyway, they went back. He sent that portrait to London. That's right. And I believe he sent it to the Royal Academy, and it was in it won a prize in their big show that and he was eventually admitted to membership in the Royal Academy. So when he got to London, portraits, people were paying money for history paintings. So he started doing history paintings. I don't have one to show you, but I do have a picture of his family, which he painted when he got to London. You see, this is 1776. The Mrs. Thomas Gage was 1771, and I think he stayed in New York for a couple of years and then went to Europe and did a grand tour where he went to Italy and went to France, and he looked at the way other artists were painting then. And then he settled in London, where his wife and children had arrived a month or two before he got there. So here he is. This is his father-in-law, his wife, his son, and his 3 daughters. And you can see it against an Italian Renaissance landscape. And he's holding sketches in his hand. And notice the beautiful carpet on the floor. And he and his wife are dressed in the height of fashion for London at that time. He did a painting of Paul Revere. And it's interesting. This is almost like the Saint Bartholomew with his knife attribute. This is Paul Revere with his attribute, probably a pewter teapot, but you know Paul Revere was a silversmith. And so he made metal objects, things for people. That was how he made his living before he became a big part of the revolution. Finally, Copley's most famous painting is Watson and the Shark. And this is he later painted Sir Brooke Watson. This is him. But the story about Watson and the Shark is that Brooke Watson was born in London, but his parents died. He was sent to Boston to live with a relative. And it turned out that that family were merchants, and so when he was old enough, was sent to sea in merchant ships to do trading. And in Havana Harbor, he was 14. And while they were anchored in the harbor, he decided to take a swim off the boat. And he took off his wool clothing and jumped into the water. And the shark took off his leg from the knee down. And so he always had a peg leg after that. And in the painting, of course, you don't see that, but it's his right leg. You see his left leg here. And then he went on to become the Lord Mayor of London. I mean, he prospered as a merchant himself. And so, and those of you who know the painting, The Raft of the Medusa in Paris, will maybe see a connection, even though it was much earlier. He may have seen that painting Wait a minute. Is that right? I think so. Anyway, there's a similarity of bodies in the naked bodies in the water and a almost triangular shaped composition. Anyway, I've run over my time, and I believe that's the last slide. Yes. So are there comments or questions?
Thank you so much, Jane and Paula. Round of applause. Yeah, if as Jane said, if anyone has any questions, please feel free. You can either unmute yourself or you can drop it in the chat if you like. And as I said earlier, I believe we are live on Facebook right now. So if you are with us on Facebook, you can also interact that way and ask a question in the chat there, and we'll be monitoring that as well. But does anyone have any questions for either Paula or Jane? Their lovely presentation.
There's an interesting correspondence here between the Egyptian portraits, which the sitters knew were going to be part of their mummy. So it's kind of a memento mori, and the portrait
Yeah.
of Francis, of St. Francis, where he's looking at the skull, also a memento mori.
Yes, good point. Yeah. Yeah, that's good, Bert. Okay. Anybody else? If not,
Any other questions for either of the two? Like I said, you can drop it in the chat. Feel free to unmute yourself. Some people on Facebook are saying thank you, so thank you to both. Paula
Thank you.
and
thanks.
Thank you, Jane and Paula. Very interesting discussion.
You're certainly welcome. Tune in next time in a month when we do this again.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. So if there are no other questions, that is it for today. Before you guys head out, I do want to let you know, as Jane said, Jane and Paula will be presenting the first Thursday of every month, but we do have a recurring presentation through every Thursday of the month. So next week we will have another tour at the same time at 11. And that one is going to be titled How European Colonialism and the Age of Sailing Influenced Seascape Art. So that will be a really interesting presentation. So please feel free to join us for that one. And any of the other tours, you can find information for those on our Timken website. So please feel free to join us for those.
I have a question.
Oh, yeah, absolutely, Martha.
I'm confused. It took me 20 minutes to find the link because there's a recurring link, and that was not it for today. And in
Sure,
general,
That's the
yeah,
problem.
sorry about any link mix-up. If you are wanting to make sure that you have the right one will always be on our website. So if you're unsure, go ahead and use the one on the website, and that will be the one that we'll be using. So sorry about any mix-up.
it's on the Timken website.
Yes,
Yeah,
exactly.
it's hard to find though. You have to go to events and then click down until you get to the virtual tours. I tried to find it at some point, and it was
Yeah,
not.
it's under the events tab on our website. So you can find it there, or you can come onto Facebook as well, and it'll be streaming there as well. But yeah, so sorry about any mix up, but that is where you can probably find the best updated information if you're wondering about the link.
Okay, is there one every week?
So yes, there is a reoccurring tour every Thursday, and that has kind of a rotating, different docents coming in. So some are through Jane and Paula, some are by our other docents. But every Thursday at 11, we do have a tour. And then if you go on our events tab, there are also other tours that are available. For example, there's one in a continuing series on Wednesday. Next Wednesday will be another one. That one's at 10. So the Thursday link will be on the website if you want to, kind have come to that one, it will be on the website for every Thursday. So you'll be able to see them there.
Great. Well, thank you.
Of
Very
course. Any other questions or anything like that? All right. Fantastic. Well, thank you again. Such a great presentation today by Paula and Jane. So thank you so much for that. And thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, bye.
Thank you. It's wonderful.